While I was watching the Tom Brady roast. That was so hilarious, man. And here you are right in the back there. And man, Belichick roasted your butt.
He did. Honestly, it's the only time I've ever laughed at Bill. I mean,
That nobody held back. Nobody held back. He looked surprised.
I like to use the word savage. Like it was as savage a moment that I've ever sat through. And from the minute it started, I was like, oh boy, wow, this is another level.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast, brought to you by DeerCast. I'm your host, Matt Drury, and today I'm super pumped. We got a guest that we've known, Mark and Terry have known for a very long time. I'm super excited to have him on. So we got Matt Light, three-time Super Bowl champion. Matt was drafted to the NFL by the New England Patriots as a left tackle in 2001. 11 NFL seasons, made 5 Super Bowl appearances. Unfortunately, beat the St. Louis Rams in one of them. We're not going to talk about that. And 3 Super Bowl wins, 3 trips to the Pro Bowl. And most importantly, in 2002, Matt and his wife, Susie, established the Light Foundation to help young people develop the skills, values, and mindset they need to create a meaningful and productive future. And most importantly, give them the opportunity to experience the outdoors. All right, that was a long introduction, but you have a lot of stuff you've done in your life. What's up, Matt?
Well, listen, first, I just want to say I got to meet your father and your uncle many moons ago. It was with Coon Dog, of course, so there were margaritas involved and a lot of good camaraderie. And I got to tell you just how much I respect, what your family's done, what you guys stand for, especially through the outdoors. There's a lot of people that do a lot of amazing things, but your family, you guys are like pioneers, and I'm sure you've got a lot of great stories. But man, I had a great time hunting with them in Missouri at Terry's place, and we've had some really cool moments together. So it's an honor to be with you and talk a little shop, maybe a little stuff with the foundation, and get into whatever you want. But it's just great to join you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So could you remember what year that was? I was trying to think back because I started out of college for these guys. I started working full time in 2004, and I feel like that was right before or right around the time that you went on a turkey hunt with those guys, right?
I did, and I don't want to just come right out the gate and bring a negative in, but I feel like it's the only time that they've never killed a turkey. Period. I mean, I don't know I think we heard a couple, but I think I got garholed on that one. I'm not sure what it was. I think they were testing my patience or something, but we didn't kill a bird.
Yeah.
Okay?
So when we have important guests, we like to garhole them every time.
Well, so whatever year it was that everybody talks about the time they had a fat guy in camp and he didn't kill a bird, that's the year, definitely.
Yeah. It's funny because they've done turkey camp for forever. Well, were you at Dad's farm or were you over at Coon Dog's lease that he had? They had the Roost or whatever they called their little camp. Do you remember?
Yeah, I was at your dad's place.
Okay.
Man, and what a spot. I mean, I hadn't really been anywhere near there before to hunt or any camps in that location. And, I love the terrain. I mean, I think for me, one of the coolest parts about turkey hunting is when you get an opportunity to go on the road, hunt a place you've never been to, hunt with guys that you like being around. Obviously, that makes a big difference. But just seeing the terrain, the different features, the different parts of this country where the birds are, especially springtime, man, it doesn't get any better. But we had a great time regardless. We didn't need to kill a bird. So
back then, it's interesting because when the first few years he had the farm, it was just like the first year or two, he had a lot of birds, and then he went through just some major issues decade where it was really tough to hunt it. And just recently, it's gotten really good again in the last couple of years. But Forrest, the guy that works there, his farm manager, he's done a lot of predator control and nest predation control, and it's made all the difference in the world. But I do want to share with you, he was amping it up big time this spring, And he's like, you got to come up here. You got to come up here. It's the most birds I've ever had. It's the gobbling. They're gobbling their heads off. And so I took my daughter up. She's 7 for her first ever, to come with me for her first ever time in a hunt camp or anything like that. And we went up there and we got garholed. It was terrible. So don't feel alone. It's happened to me too.
Yeah, I tell you, isn't that one of the better moments as a father to have your daughter, your son, kind of have that first experience of just being out, maybe not necessarily hunting, but in the blind with you, cruising through the woods,
Yeah.
seeing all the cool stuff, maybe finding a mushroom or a shed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's takes me back. My oldest, she just graduated from Purdue, so we were back in the Midwest and went to her graduation, and my youngest is 11. So, we got 2 in between, but man, you don't get the first back, right? I mean, the first or the first, and that's a special time.
Yeah, and she's a crack up. I mean, she's a real pistol. So we were sitting there. I told this story in the podcast a couple weeks ago, but we were sitting there, and it was dead silent. It was really boring, and I think Terry was falling asleep maybe, and she was kind of laying on my lap, and she goes, "For some reason, I just want to scream really badly right now." And that's her personality, but we had some good memories out of it for sure, but the hunting wasn't that great. So I told her, I was like, she goes, "I'm never coming back no matter what you say to me," because I kept telling her how awesome it was going to be. And I was like, "I promise you it gets better." So we got the tough one out of the way. Now it's just all the good stuff.
Well, that's right. And I tell you, my daughter's first, my youngest, she was 6 and she's with me in the blind, and I remember the birds are gobbling, but the thing that I sweated the most with her first turkey hunt was that I had a little backpack, and in that backpack was a bunch of snacks. And on the way there, because it gets, birds are on the ground here in the Northeast about 4:50 in the morning.
Wow.
Like, and that's this morning I was in the woods, and at 4:50 there was a bird on the ground. So,
Jeez.
When you get up that early, especially with a little one, 6-year-old,
Yeah.
they're awake, but immediately she said, "Did you grab my backpack with my snacks?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, honey, I got those." Well, the bird hammered, and he was on the ground by about 5:15 that morning, and we'd only been in the blind for maybe 40 minutes, but she had gone through the majority of those snacks, and I kept thinking, man, if that bird doesn't show up any minute, I'm in a world of trouble.
Yeah, we're screwed. Well, those moments especially with kids, it's so funny because it's a much different experience on the hunt when you have youth with you. And I guess as it comes, circling back to the Light Foundation, like what was the main draw for you? I mean, you grew up obviously in the outdoors. What was it about that you wanted to try to connect the youth of today with those same feelings?
I think the big thing for me and for my family, well, I guess if I backed up, right? So, I grew up in Darke County, Ohio. It's right on the Indiana border, north of Dayton, close to Richmond, Indiana, and, big farming community. I grew up basically just loving the outdoors. I wanted to be a forest ranger for a long time until I found out they don't make any money. And then, football for me just happened, right?
Yeah.
My father grew up with severe polio, and he didn't play sports, and we didn't watch sports as a family. I mean, I can't think of a time where there was anything related to any sport on a television.
Really?
So the first time I saw a college football game, I was playing in it.
Oh.
And I didn't know Purdue was in the Big Ten, and I've talked about this in the past. I mean, in some ways, it kind of sounds like I didn't appreciate, the path I was on, and that's not the case. I mean, I soaked all of it up. I loved every second of it, whether it was high school football, peewee football even. I mean, I loved it. But when I got to Purdue, I didn't even know they were in the Big Ten. To me, I just wanted to go somewhere where they had a good engineering program, and lo and behold, they're going to pay for my college. I thought that was pretty cool. And, I did my time at Purdue, making it sound like I was in prison, but I graduated from Purdue, and the draft that I was in, again, was the first draft I'd ever seen in my life. I had no idea where the New England Patriots were. So I say all that to just set the stage for, I didn't feel as though I deserved to even have an opportunity to earn that much money. And I figured at any minute they were going to figure out they made a big mistake and cut me. So, I think it was like halfway through. Immediately when I got drafted, a friend came up to me and said, "Hey, man, you know how much the guy made with the 48th overall pick last year?" And when he told me the number, I almost fell over. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, I was so naive. And so at that moment, I remember my grandmother's words in my head. She'd always say, "To whom much is given, much is required." She didn't write that. I now know that, but she was always big on paying it forward. Just this idea of having gratitude and respect for what you have, and so I remember thinking, I want to do something big, and then we win this crazy Super Bowl, which we're not going to talk about. But we win this crazy Super Bowl in 2001. It was my rookie season. My coaches would always tell me, "Light, you don't know if the ball's pumped or stuffed," and I didn't. And I'm just like, okay, now I really have to do something. So by 2001 was my rookie season. By 2002, we had set up the Light Foundation. I called on friends and family, and we just, honestly, I just wanted to do something to help young people that could potentially, find their way out of a tough moment. I mean, I was a kid that made all kind of mistakes. I was in trouble all the time. Community service. I painted a lot of park benches. I was given a lot of second chances, and I just felt like, if there's something I can do, I can work with young people, and I love the outdoors, so that's an easy go-to. And so from 2002 to 2008, we kind of figured out exactly who we were as a nonprofit, and from then on, it's just been an incredible run of meeting people that have changed my life, have worked with the kids that we serve and changed their lives, and man, we just get to hang with young people and point them in the right direction, or give them a little encouragement, or maybe scold them a little bit about what they're doing, and try to get them to do something different. But it's been a blessing, man.
So how does a youth get involved? Is it just through, church? Is it through school? Or like, how are you connecting with these kids specifically? How do they get involved in it? Is it recommended to them, or, you know what I mean? Like, where are you finding them at?
Yeah, all over the place. It's a weird concept because most nonprofits, they have a mission statement that's real specific. And so what we have are three buckets. We have the things that we've created from scratch, our particular programming. Things like Camp Vaholicus, which is a 4-year leadership program. We have things like Project, our timber framing camp. We have a football camp, of course, but everything we do it falls underneath the Light Foundation's Leadership Academy. So, if it has something to do with one of our youth turkey hunts, whether it's Ohio or Rhode Island, it's much more than just a youth turkey hunt. We're engaging these young people on how they can become better leaders, which is basically a way of saying, it covers every basis, right? Like how you treat people,
Yeah.
how you show up to work, the decisions that you make, right? That all falls in that leadership category. So we have a hook that we like to use, whether it's a timber framing camp or a youth turkey hunt or a leadership program. And then when they're there, then we get real, what we call real, responsible, ethical, accountable leaders, and we work with them. And the way we find these young people, sometimes we go out and specifically, look for kids from a specific area, right? And we cover the cost of flying them in and doing all the work, and that's for particular programs. And other things, it's just a general sign up. We got our website, we market, what the program is, the kids sign up, but in everything we do, it's competitive. So there's only so many spots, and we ask them to not only fill out, an application, but to also supply us with an essay. And that's asking a lot of kids these days. You know how many scholarships go unfulfilled because they just don't want to fill an application, right?
Which
and here
is
we
crazy.
are asking kids, you got to put skin in a game.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you want to be in our youth turkey hunt, you got to get an application in on time. You got to fill out the essay. We're going to grade the essay. The top 20 are going to make it in. And oh, by the way, you got to do some community service, i.e., not really community service, but habitat restoration, so that you can learn how we can prolong this awesome thing we call turkey hunting.
That's pretty special because it's different when you, like you said, when you have skin in the game. It's to have to work for something to get kids' confidence levels up to teach them that they can succeed. Something's hard. Something as simple as even learning to ride a bike, right? Or learning to swim, or, things that we, probably feel like, yeah, everybody should do that. But anymore, it's not like these kids even getting their license. They're just not doing it because it's too hard to go take the test. They just don't have that drive. And this is a broad stroke that I'm painting here, obviously. But to make the requirements hard enough to where you're gonna immediately weed out some of the kids that just, maybe they were just doing it because it's like, okay, well, this is too much work. All right, you already weed them out. The next group of kids that are taking the time to write an essay, then you really start to understand who they are as people. And then they understand like, hey, I had to work to get into this opportunity. They're going to take it much more serious, if they're chosen. That's a pretty great way to go about it.
It's funny when you brought up the bike riding, we in our Camp Vahoakis, our 4-year program, right? We start with kids. We just selected a class out of Florida, and they're just finishing up their 8th grade year, and they will be in this program until they graduate from high school.
Nice.
And so we get to know them. We get to, and a lot of times these kids come from, some interesting backgrounds, but they're young men that we feel as though we can introduce them to things like community service and career educational tours and camp projects and get them around other kids from other parts of the country and work through a lot of things. But we ride dirt bikes. And, for kids that don't grow up riding dirt bikes, and most of our kids come from the inner cities.
Yeah.
That's a pretty intimidating thing.
Yeah.
You got to work a clutch and you got to shift, and, you got guys yelling at you because we don't want you to blow the engine up, and you got to stay on 2 wheels. And we had a young man one time that was out there on the track, and I'm like, man, this guy can't even keep 2 wheels close to being on the ground. Like, what is he doing? And I go over and I said, hey, man, this is just like riding a bike. And he says, I've never ridden a bike. And I remember that was about a decade ago. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah. And the reason why I even brought it up is because I've been harping on my kids for years. I got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they just didn't care about it. And they got these scooters, and they got, hoverboards, and they got all this other stuff to ride around, and they didn't care. And I kept telling them, I'm like, you have to do this. It's a life skill that I feel like you have to do. And finally for Mother's Day, I took them both. I was like, look, Mom probably doesn't care as much as I do, but we got to ride this bike for Mother's Day, and they both did it. And now they're both every day riding. They're like, man, this is so awesome. I'm like, I told you guys, like the entire neighborhood just opened up to you now because you can ride these bikes. It seems like a simple thing, but the confidence, just even seeing it in their faces, the confidence when they learned how to do it and figured out they could, it didn't give up, and we kept pushing through. And it's the same principle that you're talking about with your foundation, giving kids confidence and then them taking that to the next level. It's amazing what they can do when someone's pushing them in a positive way to push through the hard stuff and accomplish something. And it's like, oh, it wasn't even that hard. Now the next thing. These are life skills when you get to high school, writing a paper, taking a test, essays, whatever it is. Like, you always think it's the hardest thing until you get through it and you go to the next thing to accomplish it. And boy, if you don't have hard things leading up to that, whatever, when you graduate school or high school or college, if you haven't done hard things leading up to that point and nobody's pushed you, boy, it's going to be a tough road for you as an adult. So I think what you're doing there is it's paramount. It's key to building up their abilities for their next part of their life.
Yeah. And to be sensitive to people who do go through hard times, I say this quite a bit, but we don't suffer enough, and especially young people, right? Things come too easy to us. You think back to what, our parents' generation, how they grew up, the things they did, back up one more generation, which is not that long ago.
No, they didn't have light.
Yeah. You're looking at your grandparents and you're seeing just how much effort they had to put forth to do what are the little things, right? Not even necessarily the really hard thing, the things that we take for granted today.
Yeah.
And if you're a young person growing up, in when you don't suffer, right? Whether that's, with chores, not being hurt
Yeah.
or sick, but when you don't suffer, how can you not take things for granted? So I always tell young people, man, put yourself in the most uncomfortable position and you'll find out more than probably any other time in your life. When you're the most uncomfortable is when things really become, you get to see behind the curtain. I think you said it pretty well, right? Like until you reach that milestone and prove to yourself that you can do it, you kind of don't think you could. And
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, what's the next mountain I want to climb?
Yeah.
So I think it is amazing to watch, and that's what I love the most about the work with the foundation. It's football is a big part of my life, no doubt, but the work with the Light Foundation now for over 22, 23 years, those experiences never leave my mind. I don't remember a whole lot of plays, but I remember every time a young person has that light bulb go off or
Yeah.
that aha moment or works through something very difficult or opens up for the first time about something that they're dealing with, and there's other kids there to rally them forth. I mean, those things never leave you.
Well, and I think what you're dealing with, if you're talking about, a lot of inner city kids or youth, maybe that have had a tough home life or whatever, the tough situation in general, obviously they're already dealing with tough things, but you're giving them a tool set, that might help them overcome some of those tough things that they may have not had before they got into the Light Foundation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think our Camp Vahoicus, which was the first program that we designed, that was all geared towards taking that what I call knucklehead, right? It's the young man that set the house on fire, but he didn't burn it all the way down, right? He's the one that the teacher's like, he's a real problem, but there's always a but.
Yeah.
But if he just had and we work with these young men and man, we've battled through some serious things, and these guys, so many young people go through things that no young people should ever have to deal with. And how do they reconcile all that if they don't have somebody that can be that compass, right? That true north. It's really, really difficult. And when you get to know them over the years and you start holding them accountable and they push back a little bit, and then you keep staying on them and you keep showing them that, hey, you can trust me. And I'm not just going to go away. And you make that commitment where you say, hey, look, I'm going to ask all of this of you, but I guarantee that I'll be there right alongside you and I'll prove that to you over time. And then that relationship develops and you see this legit change. And, some of these young men we work with, man, they come from some very difficult, situations. And, we've had young men that, leave our program and end up getting shot. And thank God they're still alive, right? But they got to work through those kind of things. And I mean, again, things that no young people should ever have to deal with. But luckily, there are people that will pour into them. And we've got an incredible staff, man. I love to brag about our team. We've got people who truly want to sacrifice and be there, for the kids that we serve.
So tying it into the outdoor side, like the turkey hunt that you guys do. So have these kids, I assume most of them had never hunted prior to going with you on this hunt? I mean, what's the light bulb there hearing a turkey gobble, or do you see it kind of change their perspective, or I guess even just enlighten them on what's out there outside of, a phone and blacktop? I mean, what kind of things do you go through in that regard?
So we've done our turkey hunt in Ohio. This was, I think, year 15 or 16.
Nice.
And it was year 4 or 5 here in Rhode Island. And I got to tell you, man, I mean, first of all, the young people we meet at our turkey hunts, I mean, they're so varied and they're such characters. And in some ways, they're very, very intimidated when it's their first time. And I would say that, we do get some repeat, kids that will come one year and they'll get in the next year. And in some cases, 3 years. We've had some young people for 3 years. And of course, they get more and more confidence. But for most of them, it is their first turkey hunt. And, they come in and, they're a little nervous and, they don't know what to expect necessarily. And they're going to be with a guide or 2 guides. And and they're going to be in the woods, and there's all this. But the minute they get back to camp, whether they harvested a bird or not, it's amazing to see them come out of their shell. And we always have story time, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that just is inherent in a hunting camp, I think, and if it's not, it should be. But when these kids get up and they tell their story, you take the kid that was the most shy, and somehow that experience makes them a type A, very charismatic. I mean, the bird's always 20 pounds heavier. The guide was, the best caller on planet. I mean,
Yeah.
we have more fun listening to these kids. And I got to tell you, man, and the success, we've been very blessed to have great properties, great landowners that give us the ability to take these kids into the outdoors, which is, by the way, something that's really changed in my lifetime. I'm sure you've seen it
Yeah.
as well. And we see it all over the country. It was nothing to go hunt, cousin Eric's place or Big Mike's farm down the way. But now it's starting to be a little bit like Europe, right? Where
Yeah.
people are leasing up ground, and it's everybody wants to covet, every single piece of property they can get their hands on. And I mean, it makes it difficult, but again, we're very fortunate. We've got great landowners and people that, partner with us, and it provides these awesome opportunities for these kids.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, and we're as guilty as anybody. That access is a real issue, and obviously, I think that's why groups like the Hunting Public have become so popular, because they're shedding light on the resources that are available for guys that can't pick up, or lost their permission piece, or can't afford a lease or their own farm, and it is definitely an issue. So when you have these types of hunts, and you have people that are still dedicating their farms to, opening up their farms to groups to come in, I mean, it's very special, because if we lose that, we're in some serious trouble. And luckily, I think people understand that element of it still, and get the bigger picture, and open their doors. I know a lot of people that, especially for youth hunts, they're like, oh yeah, come on in. And, I think the hard part is the transition from youth hunt to adult hunt. Like those people being able to still have an opportunity somehow, once they transition out of the youth season into just, hey, now you got to find your own spot. That's where I think we're losing a lot of people, and it's becoming pretty tough. So, and I don't have the answer for it, because I don't know that that's going to change, and you're right in the comparison to Europe. And that's probably the most alarming thing that I see for our hunting culture going forward, is just the privatization of hunting ground, just not having enough, frankly.
Yeah, and I think really for me, what I've kind of taken from it is, on one hand, I totally understand it, and people a lot of times people don't have the means to go out and purchase a 100-acre farm or a
Yeah.
20-acre farm, and
Yeah.
so they're going to go out and they're going to look for opportunities. And look, I wish everybody the best, no matter what it is they're hunting or where they're hunting. I think for me, the best thing that I feel like I can do is I can pour into the young people that we serve and just say, hey, look, you have an obligation to go above and beyond in how you conduct yourself as a hunter in the woods, especially as it relates to the anti-hunters, right?
Mm-hmm.
You never engage, in a war of words with them. Don't take it personal. Always just say, hey, I respect your decision and how you feel, but this is something that we really enjoy doing, and you leave it at that, right? And then I think too, just that mindset of, hey, look, when you do get an opportunity to hunt on somebody else's property, go out of your way to let them know how much you appreciate that,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's hard, because in some cases kids don't see that modeled for them. And I think whenever they do realize how powerful that personal connection can be, I think it goes a long way. And we make it a point to, if the landowner's home, we're going to stop by, we're going to take a picture with them and the youth hunter, and with their bird in some cases as well. We'll have them write letters to our landowners thanking them. And I'll tell you, it's something that definitely goes the extra mile.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. My son, he's kind of an introvert. He's just a shy kid, and we were for youth season. We were hunting on my farm, but I have a lease not far from it, and I had to go over and talk to the landowner. She's a single older lady, maybe in her late 60s, early 70s, and she's a real character. And we were heading over there, and after my son, he had just killed a bird, so he was walking tall that day, anyways. And I said, hey, when we get over here, if she asks you a question, I want you to look her in the eyes and answer her, and make sure you speak up, and just kind of giving him the hey, here's what's kind of expected when someone's engaging in a conversation with you, and it's like I saw a whole different kid. And I think part of it was because of the confidence he had coming off of the shot he just made. And, he was excited for that. And part of it was, I think being around, my camera guy, Ben, and myself, and going to talk to landowners, that too builds confidence in a kid. And they got to learn how to have a conversation with someone that's not a screen, and that's not a skill set that's just a given anymore. Like, you have to work with them on those things. So it was, I think those are important things that you're doing, and that in and of itself builds a lot of character for down the road. So you're doing a lot of great things, and it's awesome that you're teaching these kids these kind of life skills.
Well, listen, I get to be a kid, I get to go out and watch a kid call in a bird, watch a kid, hunt a bird. I think I get as much as these kids do. I know it's kind of almost cliche, but I'll tell you, it's just been an amazing run year in and year out. And look, we have some legends, right? Ernie Calandrelli.
Oh yeah.
Ernie was the first guy that I ever hunted turkeys with. I've learned so much from him, from our buddy Wade, and just all these guys that I've been able to meet through the outdoors over the last, 2-3 decades. They're the same people that pour into these kids. We ask them, hey man, can you, I know you're going to 50 different places. I know you're guiding all over the country, but can you maybe pop in here for this youth hunt? And when those guys are there, as they're characters,
oh, yeah.
They're larger than life. They're teaching kids how to make a wing bone call.
Yeah.
How cool is that, right? A kid never could even possibly imagine in his wildest dreams that you could call in a bird with part of its own body, So, and then guys are teaching them how to cook the bird. And to me, that's really the biggest part of it. I think, my grandfather, was in the Outdoor Writers Association. My great grandfather started the local column, Lights Outdoors, in the Dark County paper, the Daily Advocate, and it went 3 generations of the men that came before me talking about the outdoors and talking about conservation and practicing conservation, and I look back on those moments and that history and I'm just so grateful, because to me, at this stage in my life, I used to be a guy that cared about, the size of the deer or how much the turkey weighed and what the score was. And, I think we probably all go through that to some degree. And I wouldn't say I was huge, but I was definitely into it. Today, it's everything that happens before and everything that happens after,
You nailed it.
Setting stands and working the ground and understanding how to track, the food plots and the success we have or that we didn't have and the reasons why, and soil samples and hinge cuttings and all this cool stuff. And then on the back end, the butchery. And as a fat guy, man, I butcher a lot of deer and I love it. So I don't know. I look at that whole cycle, and then you put that in perspective with young people. And that is literally a lifestyle for the rest of their lives that they could take advantage of if they want.
Yep. I think you nailed it. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit before we run out of time. I want to talk a little bit about some of the football side of things. And the other day I was sitting there watching, like millions of other people, I was watching the Tom Brady roast, and that was so hilarious, man. And here you are right in the back there. And man, Belichick roasted your butt.
He did. Honestly, it's the only time I've ever laughed at Bill. I mean, you got to realize we went at one point 16-0, 18-0,
Yeah.
almost 19. We didn't lose a game, and there wasn't one time where we came in on a Monday morning for film study where he was like, "All right, you guys did a great job. We really kicked the tar out of him." I mean, he's like Mr. Miserable, he'd pull up the 7 plays where we didn't execute at a really high level, and he'd be like, "If we do these 7 things again, we're never gonna win a freaking game." And you're like, wow. And so to see him up on stage doing what he did
Yeah.
was a bit of a shock. And by the way, he can throw it at me all he wants because I wasn't the best football player. I mean, I was okay, but I kind of prided myself in being a guy that could make people laugh. And I definitely took advantage of him a few times, which my wife thought I was going to get cut every time I would do something to him. But so he definitely, I had it coming.
Well, it was hilarious. The whole thing was funny. I couldn't stop watching it. I mean, it was just a train wreck to watch, and the comedians were unbelievable. That nobody held back. Nobody held back. Like it was. I think Tom was. He looked surprised that people were going that hard at him. So it was awesome.
I like to use the word savage. Like it was as savage a moment or a 3 hours actually that I've ever sat through. And look, I was so naive. Like I've never been on social media and for no particular reason other than I don't want to go to jail. But like I've never logged on to a platform in my life, right? And I'm gonna wear that badge of honor. But that said, I'm naive to most things that happen in the real world. And I had never seen one of these roasts. And I from the minute it started, I was like, oh boy, wow, this is
Oh,
another level.
we're
right?
doing this, okay?
Yeah, this is actually happening. And I will say this. I mean, there were obviously some unbelievable moments. Nikki did a phenomenal. She's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah.
She was unbelievable. Tony, unbelievable. I mean, there's so many great moments. Julian and Gronk, of course, teammates and guys that I love. They did a great job. I thought Kevin Hart was as good of a host
Yeah.
as there could have ever been. I mean, the way he kept it flowing, the things that he would interject, the times that he would go off script, and it's a live event. I mean, I don't know that there's anything harder. If you're a big time movie star, there's a different level for doing something live, right?
Yeah.
It was a very interesting thing to watch, and I thought they pulled it off. And I mean, kudos to them because that was a big gamble.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Netflix. I mean, it was so well done, well produced, and I think speaking of Gronk, I think the only guy that got it so Tom obviously got the worst. I think Gronk got it just as the next level down. Like everybody had something to say about that poor guy.
Yeah, but you kind of got to back up. I think the one who got it the worst was Giselle.
Oh, true.
and then maybe Tom, but Gronk was definitely a close third. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure I'm sure Tom had some tough conversations with his family afterwards. It was good, man. But I wanted to bring that up because it was hilarious. So I got a kick out of watching you guys up there in the back, all the football players, because you'd see the reactions, just from them being behind the comedian or whoever was up on stage or behind Tom or whoever. And everybody was just kind of like, holy shit.
Oh yeah. Like that just happened. I mean, I don't know why this one always sticks in my head. He's like, really, Tom, 8 times a day with a jiu-jitsu trainer? Are we serious?
Didn't see it coming? Come on.
Didn't see it coming? Come on.
Yeah. So from the playing days, anything, you had an incredible career. You're being pretty humble there. But when you said you're just an okay football player, I mean, you guys, dynasty doesn't even really sum it up. What was a true highlight from the playing days for you?
I think that first season stands out a lot. I think for a number of reasons. It was 9/11 happens, and actually to back up a little bit, we lost our quarterback coach. He passed away, and that was a tough thing. It was my rookie year, and I never had a coach, died, while we were getting ready for the season or
Yeah.
at any point, right? And so all these things kind of came together. And again, you're a rookie, and I'm asked to start at left tackle, and yeah, I don't know. Bledsoe goes
Yeah.
down, severs an artery, almost dies in a field. I mean, it was just a crazy year. And then of course 9/11 happens,
Yeah.
and the chaos that is around the world. And one of my wingman, Joe Andruzzi, his three of his brothers and his father, they're firemen in New York City, and so they're in the towers doing their thing, and luckily they all survived. But it really hit home that season. And then for us to go on this improbable run, make it into the playoffs, with this, rinky dink quarterback who, couldn't even start at Michigan,
Yeah.
like, how is this possible? The snow game against Oakland,
Yeah.
for the championship. I mean, it was such an improbable run. And to end it winning that Super Bowl against the greatest show on turf. So sorry.
That's all right.
And 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 my wife coming down to the field, and she's pregnant, and we're getting ready to have our first kid who just graduated college. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just a surreal moment. And look, I mean, I can't tell you how great it was to play with the guys that I got to play with too. I mean, that to me, that's the best highlight.
Yeah.
I played with some of the greatest humans on earth, and I don't think that was the case in every locker room, in all 32 teams, right? I
Yeah.
think we were very fortunate. They brought in high character, quality humans that could also play football, and I really appreciated that, man. It's something to look back on, the big moments and the games and the Super Bowls or the playoffs or getting ejected, from a game. I that was always my favorite part. Not the fine that came with that, but I like the violence of football, which they've eliminated now. Which I won't even go down that road, but it is true. But it's really the guys that I did it with. That was the highlight of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that 2001 year, you guys, it was destiny, with everything going on in the country, the Patriots to go on and win. I actually even wrote an essay in college about it because it just felt like destiny. It was like you couldn't lose, it just was meant to be. So it was not as fun to watch as a St. Louis fan, but now that the Rams aren't here, we could just say, yeah, you guys were great. It was meant to be.
Yeah. Well, all right. We're moving on.
That's right. Well, so all right, you've hunted your whole life. Name one time that something crazy happened. I mean, I've seen you hunting with the guys at Buck Commander and doing some crazy stuff. But what's the favorite or most special memory you have in the outdoors? Not related to necessarily the Light Foundation or the youth hunts, but something related to your hunts.
Well, I mean, we've messed with so many people. So there's like the practical joke moments, which always fun, right? Whether it's the stuff we did with Rochi and the Buck Commander crew and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I honestly though, the one of them that stands out in my mind, like when you first mentioned that, there was a season where, like, when you play football at any level really, but your falls are tough,
Yeah.
right? And when I got to New England, Bill was like really like all about winning and practicing all the time, and no days off. And
Yeah.
so we really had one day, Tuesday, but we typically had to go in and work out anyway. But I could sneak out maybe 3 or 4 times during the season, and I'd be dying. I'd be in my tree stand, like my knees are killing me, my back hurts, like I'm missing like half the skin on my elbows.
Yeah.
It's like, feeling sorry for myself. And anyway, I remember one season I was able to get out, and I actually was hunting my farm in Ohio because we had played in a Thanksgiving game. I think we played in Detroit, and I was able to drive back, and I got my buddy with me, and I drop him in a set. And when I get in the woods, it was so dark I couldn't see anything. I didn't bring a lamp, a headlight, or nothing with me, right? And I remember I knew I was on the right trail, and I knew the trail was going to drop down and go on this little off camber. And I knew I got off because the leaves, I was crunching leaves. So I back up, and I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, right? And I'm carrying my bow, and I know I'm probably within like 150 yards of my set. So I was trying to be as quiet as I could as a morning hunt. And as I back up to get back on the trail, I hear like you've seen A Never Ending Story.
Oh yeah.
All right, one of my favorite movies of all time. If you haven't seen that, kids, go watch it. You remember like the Nothing was like a werewolf creature?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard this sound and it was like, I don't even want to do it because I sound terrible doing it. It was like it sounded like a wolf was like mating or chewing on like something. I don't know. It was the most intimidating noise I've ever heard in my life, and it was within feet of me.
Uh-oh.
And in my mind, I immediately picture that creature in that story, and I freeze. And the one thing I'm telling myself is, don't yell. You're gonna ruin your hunt, right? And this is the dumbest thought process you could have. So I'm like, don't yell, you're gonna ruin your hunt. And now all I have my bow, so I get I get an arrow out of the quiver and I start whipping it around like an idiot. And all you can hear is like, now this thing has not stopped. It's been doing this for like 20 seconds at this point, right? And I'm whipping this arrow around and then I stop. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, they finally got you. In my mind, my buddies, all the ball busting I do, they had set this up for this exact scenario to happen. And now they have me on like some night vision camera looking like an idiot, whipping my arrow around. So I stop and I'm like, and then it stops. And then I hear it walk off. And then it went back to being dead silent. And now I'm like, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I know it was a coyote at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm an adult. I'm not going to get like weird about it. It had to be a coyote. I must have surprised it.
Still.
But I was like so like messed up mentally. So I get to my stand, and do you think I saw I didn't see a squirrel. It was, but so anyway, so it's not like the best story on earth. I mean, I've had some
That's pretty good
in the outdoors, but that one has just been one of I've just never had some. I mean, I've had a bear false charge me. That literally wasn't as intimidating because I was like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it happened, and then it was over like the minute it happened. So, you know what I mean? Like those moments come and go pretty quick. This one seemed to last for hours.
In the pitch black.
In the pitch black.
See, we have the luxury. We always get a camera guy with us. So there, you can always hold on to somebody and push them out first.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. That pitch black, it's a mental mind. It'll mess with you, right?
Oh, no doubt, man. I mean, it's, you know, you think back to like, even when you're a kid, like, you know, the way you used to think about things. Like if that would have happened to me when I was younger.
Never go back.
Oh my goodness, man. I would have had, it would have been like, I don't know, a werewolf, or it would have been something much bigger than a coyote.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that character from The Never Ending Story.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. My son, when we were turkey hunting this year for youth season, we had 3 longbeards coming from behind us, and we were in a little ground blind, and they were gobbling their brains out, and he couldn't see him, obviously. And I got the best reactions on video where it keeps gobbling. It's getting closer, and finally he just shrinks behind the butt of the stock of the gun. And he's like, "Oh God!" Like he told me later, he thought it was going to come in the blind and attack us. But that's the they don't know, right? They just think, "Oh my God, this is it."
Yeah, man. You know, honestly, in the turkey woods, some of the craziest stuff happens. I remember guiding a kid that used to be in one of our camps, and now he's a grown adult, married. You know, that's showing my age, but I took him out turkey hunting because we love to hunt together, and he's just an awesome young man. And he shoots this bird, and I go running up over this hill, and we're in this big hay field. But this hill had a precipitous fall, like off the back side of it. Well, the bird gets up, he barrel rolled it, and I don't know how they do this, but of course they do it. It gets up and it runs, and it goes flying off of this hill, and I jump in midair, and I remember going over its wings and hugging it, and then we roll all the way down this hill. And if he wasn't there, I could never tell this story because no one would believe it.
Never.
And he goes, literally, the bird is like 3 feet off the ground, and you just sent it. And he's like, then you disappeared, and I can just hear your body rolling down the hill.
You got some good stories, man. I need a co-host. Tim's out. My co-host, my normal co-host, is out. Maybe we should just start doing this podcast together. You got way better stories.
You just let me know, man. I tell you what, when you're, when you far exceeded, the expectations in life, it's every day's a gift for me at this point. All right.
That's right. Hey, I got a couple other little odds and ends things that we usually do on the show. Some question of the day stuff from the audience. If you want, you could stick around. If you got more pressing things, you could depart here at this point. I always give the guests a choice. It doesn't take too long, but I always want to give you a choice because these are some of the shenanigans, the fun and games of the show.
I'm all in, man. Let's do it.
All right. So we got the question of the day today. The question of the day is brought to you by Cold Steel. Be sure to check out the 3V Pendleton Mini Hunter, a tough subcompact knife that will make a perfect addition to any backpack or survival kit. All right, we got Brandon Plank from the Rack Pack. He says, I just started a dedicated non-typical clover plot this year. It's right at 1 acre. It's a good start, but it's hard to remain patient with those tiny plants. How long and how many overseas will it take until I get a full lush-looking plot? I'm currently following all the biologic recommendations in regards to fertilizer, herbicide, etc. Do you have any other recommendations? So I don't know about you, but anytime that we have clover plots, like I've planted them in the spring, I've also done it where we frost seeded it into, other food plot from the fall where we'd frost seed it in February. And both of those options usually take a while. It usually takes, for me, it has taken usually a full season before it's a lush clover plot. And even with that, it takes a lot of spraying, so at least 2 or 3 applications, so spring, summer, right before the fall, and it takes a little bit of maintenance. Now, that being said, it's been amazing to me. Even when I planted it in the spring, we usually plant it with, wheat or oats or something that can kind of shade it out through the summer months. In the summer, you're going to think, there's nothing. There's hardly anything. They're so tiny. Then the summer drought hits, and I feel like every time everything dies. But you'd be shocked what a couple timely rains in the fall will do to help it blow up and really give you a good covering. And once you mow it there, say right before the season, once the real heat of the summer is over, mostly over, it's amazing to me what's grown up underneath there. So that's been my experience. By the second fall, or by the second season, it's usually pretty lush. Matt, I don't know, have you had much experience planting any kind of clover, and what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I get a lot of friends of mine that feel the same way. Like, every time I put in clover, it just never really takes, or it just comes in and it just gets overgrown. And we do all of our fire breaks in clover, which is a lot of, it's a lot of clover, and it holds up really well. We did a Endura clover one time, and that was really tough to get established. But once it was established, man, that stuff has been gangbusters.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really destroy it. But I would say, I think you hit it on the head. I think the weeds, keeping the competition down, max arrest, slay, once it gets established, even hitting it, with a Roundup, because my experience is, it'll wilt, it'll turn a little nasty, but it always comes back.
Yeah.
I just think too often you go out and you check your plot, and then you check it again, and then it's like all of a sudden it just happens on you. You forget to check it, and the weeds just get too overbearing, right? So I think you just really have to be diligent with going in and spraying those before they get established. And then just patience and the hope that you get some rains, hope that it's not really, really, really dry. But even then, as you noted, like it will come back. And then I think the FERT application, which too often, we feel like, oh, well, I hit it, when I put it in, and, it doesn't really need to have a hit again. Well, maybe, but, if you did, you'd probably be a little bit happier with where you're at.
For sure. And Dad always told me this, and he's always like, hey, you'd be surprised. They'll lay dormant there, and you'll be surprised what, if it looks like it's all dead or it's, the weeds overtook it, what a little bit of maintenance and a rain there in the fall, like what will happen. And our seasons have been so warm here the last few years. Really, the clover's been as much of a key to our hunts we used to plant a lot of brassicas and, whatever else, radishes, and really the clover, because of how warm it's really been great for us, the kind of the VIP food plot all the way up through basically the entire season, because it's mostly warm enough for them, other than a couple cold spurts throughout the year where they're hitting that green food source a lot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is too, just what you're planting into, right? If you're frost seeding, that's one thing, but if you have the ability to really create a perfect seed bed, meaning that you've worked your ground, you then wait for it to pop, the first little initial pop, you kill that off, and then you're planting into something that isn't going to have that immediate competition. I think that goes a long way too. And again, that's very difficult for a lot of people to do,
Yeah, I planted one year, I planted late, like it might have been middle of May. So I planted super late for a spring planting of clover. And that fall, it did not look great, but it was there. And by the next, we frost seeded it again. And by that next season, it was beautiful. And really, once you get them established, they're really hard to mess them up. Even if you've like right now, we've had so much rain here this spring here in the Midwest, and I haven't had a chance to go spray or mow any of my stuff. I know the weeds have overtaken all of it, but with a little bit of TLC, by fall, it'll be the best looking stuff I got. And I was having such a hard time with fall plantings because of the droughts we've been in, that I pretty much went to all clover just so I had something for the fall, because everything I was trying to plant, and in the end of the summer, I just couldn't get it to grow. And so if you can establish it and give it a little TLC throughout the year, clover is really a pretty good route to go. So.
No doubt. I mean, I think it's probably the go-to on our farm as well. Although I do like playing with a lot of different mixes. I don't know. For me, it's like the discovery, right? Like, well, how's this going to turn out? Is it going to be a salad bowl, or is it going to be a dust bowl?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll plan it, but the best stuff I ever had was usually. Well, I had a piece down in the Mississippi, kind of really right off the Mississippi, and that dirt was so, it was just so black, and it was really good dirt that all my food plots, I almost couldn't screw it up. One of those things. And I thought I got a big head, and I thought I was a really good food plotter until I sold that farm and then went to other places and couldn't get anything to grow. It's like, all right, I'm going to go back to clover here. All right, so next thing we do a wildlife word. So today's wildlife word is brought to you by Nutrient Ag Solutions. Nutrient Ag Solutions offers over 9,000 trusted products to help your crops stay healthy, productive, and profitable. Speaking of planting. All right, so this word, it's spelled STOLON, but it's pronounced stolen. And I'm going to give you, it's multiple choice. I didn't put this together. Someone else puts it together for me. So usually I don't have the answer. This week, since my co-host isn't here, I got the answer. You're going to be the one guessing. So, all right, stolen. What does it stand for? Is it A, a creeping horizontal plant stem, or a runner that takes root at points along its length to form new plants? B, what happens to unsecured trail cameras? Stolen. Ha, I get it. C, the outer skin of a bratwurst. D, the scientific name of a soybean pod. All right, stolen. STOLON. What say you?
I believe it's the first one you mentioned. I mean, I know I've heard that, and I thought it was like a part of the plant, and for some reason I thought it was part of like the male part of the plant. I don't know why, but I'm going to go with the first one that you mentioned.
Ding, ding. Here, you get an applause. Just like you're at the roast. An applause. All right. I have a studio audience as well, Matt. It's huge. One guy over here in the corner, one guy in his office over there. It's a pretty big audience.
Yeah, my audience is really tiny. You can't see them, but they're great people.
Yeah. Love everything I say. All right. So one of the last things we do shout outs every week. So if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or over on YouTube and DeerCast, leave us a comment, leave us a review, and we'll read it here. So we got one shout out from Apple Podcast. It says the best easy listening podcast from WTFH Lee. I'm not going to say what that stands for, but I can imagine. It says, thanks, Matt and Tim, for putting out some educational and fun podcast. A very easy listen. I enjoy the turkey series and look forward to what the rest of the year has to come. All right. And last but not least, we have a thing we call the Rack Pack. Terry came up with the name. It's a private Facebook group for the listeners of the show. And all you got to do is type in 100% Wild Rack Pack. It'll come up. You can join it. Every week, they give me some names and new members. Every week, they put in a fake name. So I gotta weed it out. So new Rack Pack members this week: Kevin Driscoll, Jared Little, Wyatt Austin Butts. That sounds like either a serial killer or a Simpsons name. I don't know. Duke Silver, which also sounds fake. Caleb Bailey, Seth Abernathy, Colton Berry. All right, so I'm going with Duke Silver. What's the fake name you think?
I was gonna say I don't know though. I'm pretty sure that may be like a porn star.
That's right. Producer Matt, do we know who the fake name is this week? No. I'm going with Duke Silver. So Duke, if you're a real human being, let us know in the Rack Pack. So
Duke Silver. All
right. Well, any parting shots for me? How can people help with the Light Foundation? How can they get a hold of you guys? How, if they're in the areas that you guys are at, how can they, volunteer their ground or their services, or what's the most immediate need that you guys have?
You know what? I think just anybody that wants to learn about what we do, MattLight72.com. That's our website. You can check out all the programming, but we do have two incredible events that happen this fall. It's the 20th year for the Celebrity Shootout. This event we launched here in the Northeast. It's in a great state of Rhode Island. It's at Addyville East Farm. It's a phenomenal, I know I'm biased, but it's an amazing event. It's where we raise about 85% of all the funding, for the year comes in this one day of shooting a sporting clays tournament. But man, we got Tyler Farr, T Farr is going to be playing. Nice. We've got, great entertainment, great food, Capitol Grill. It's an all-day event, the best fireworks on earth, and man, every gun you'd ever want to shoot, and of course the sporting clays tournament. But it's a wild event, 20th year, big celebration for that one. So if you want to come out, hang out with a whole bunch of former and current Patriot players and other celebrities, have fun shooting the course, go to MattLight72.com, check out the Matt Light Celebrity Shootout. And then the day before that, we have our corporate training day where we bring in some of the nation's, most elite special operators. They teach people what they do best. We'll be shooting machine guns off of tanks and full auto, crazy stuff. And those two events, they raise a lot of money for the work we do, and it supports the cause that, means the most to us, and that's working with young people. So you can go to the website, check it all out. But man, listen, enjoyed getting to hang with you and catch up, and you make sure you tell your uncle and your father how much I appreciate them, and hopefully see you guys in the woods before too long.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us, and I need to get those guys to have you back out for another hunt. Like, we can't end it with a hunt 20-something years ago where they gar hold you. Like, that can't be the best that we can do.
I kind of feel the same way.
Well, I'll make sure and let them know. And if we can help with the foundation in any way, we're happy to do that. We can connect off air, and we'd be happy to participate in any way we can and help what you're doing. It's a great cause, and we really appreciate you lending your name and your funds and all the connections to a worthy cause.
Well, listen, and good luck with all your food plots and getting ready for the season, man. I think this will be a good one.
That's right. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, we'll see you later. Peace out.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast. Prep, predict, and pursue your target buck.